In episode 21, as part of my interview with Tom Doody of the Crying Shames, he said this.
Secondly, the money that Columbia was going to spend to promote our album, they spent on what they thought was the next big sound, which was the San Francisco sound.
So let's take a look at that West Coast sound. Now, I'm not going to talk about the Grateful Dead or the Jefferson Airplane in this episode. That's for the future. We're going to look at two other bands that came out of the Bay Area around 1967. And let's start first with the band that Tom Doody says got all of the Crying Shames publicity money for their third album. You ready? Let's drop the needle. 1967 was a very heady time for San Francisco. Over 100,000 people descended on the neighborhood of Haight-Ashbury and created what became known as the Summer of Love. And right after that was the Monterey Pop Festival, with the likes of the Jefferson Airplane, The Who, Jimi Hendrix, and Big Brother and the Holding Company with Janis Joplin. It was a wild time. And one band to come out of San Francisco at this time was touted as one of the best, but they never quite achieved the success that was behind that hype. That band was formed in 1967 by Skip Spence, the original drummer of the Jefferson Airplane, and Matthew Katz, who was the original Jefferson Airplane manager. The band also had three guitarists in Peter Lewis, Jerry Miller, and Skip Spence, similar to the Buffalo Springfield. They were joined by Bob Mosley on bass and Don Stevenson on drums. And all the members wrote and sang. By the way, the name Moby Grape comes from a joke. What's purple and swims in the ocean? The first album, Moby Grape, was released in July 1967 during the Summer of Love. The songs are great. We get Hey Grandma, Come in the Morning, 805, and Omaha, which showcases the three-guitar attack. Columbia put huge hype around this album, and as Tom Doody said, they even released 5 singles from the album, none of which caught on. As a result, Moby Grape was overhyped and undersold. It also hurt sales that the album cover was controversial. Here you can clearly see Don Stevenson, the drummer, extending his middle finger to the photographer. In a later pressing, Columbia airbrushed the finger out. In addition, the first pressing had them standing in front of an American flag. A veterans group complained, so Columbia reissued it with an orange flag and then even a black flag. It was a great debut album, but it only hit number 24 on the charts. Their second album was a double album, Wow, Grape Jam. This was an experiment in marketing. It was a double album, but they only charged $1 more than what a single album would cost. It worked, and the album peaked at number 20. I like Murder in My Heart for the Judge, Bitter Wind, Motorcycle Irene, and the great hippie anthem, Naked If I Want To. Grape Jam obviously was an album of jams, but it did include the greats Mike Bloomfield and Al Kooper, and was said to be their inspiration for the far superior album that came afterwards from them with Steve Stills, called Super Session. In 1969, they released their third album, Moby Grape 69. It was a failure. It only hit 113 on the charts. By 1971, the band had essentially broken up, although they have regrouped many times over the years. The only consistent members are Peter Lewis, Jerry Miller, and Skip Spence. On a sad note, they don't even own not only their music, but the name of the group, Moby Grape. This is definitely a case of lots of great opportunity sadly squandered. Another great group hitting the San Francisco scene in 1969 was Quicksilver Messenger Service, and they recorded 8 albums. Let's talk about their first 4. The first album, called Quicksilver Messenger Service, features John Cipollina, Gary Duncan, David Freeberg, and Greg Elmore. The album introduces the act as both a jam group and a pop group, and it peaked at number 63. In 1969, they released one of their better records, Happy Trails. Again, it was the same 4 guys, but the concept of this album was totally different. Side 1 is only one song, a 27-minute version of Bo Diddley's Who Do You Love? The album was recorded at the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West, but nothing on the cover tells you which songs were recorded where. Side 2 is made up of shorter songs, and notably ends with a theme song from Roy Rogers' popular television show. This album perfectly captures the psychedelic era, and it peaked at number 27 on the charts. For their third album, they enlisted Nicky Hopkins, as Gary Duncan has left. Nicky was a well-known and respected musician who played with the Rolling Stones, The Who, and even all of the 4 Beatles. The title is a great track, and this album shows them leaving psychedelia behind and pursuing a more pop sound. For their fourth album, Quicksilver Messenger Service had expanded into a group of 6 people. The album contains their only hit single, Fresh Air. The album was their third straight album to reach the top 30, charting at 27. By 1970, Nicky Hopkins and John Cipollino had left. Now, the band regrouped a number of times, but never ever found success again. So, 2 bands from San Francisco in the 1967 Summer of Love. Both bands showed great talent and great potential, and in fact, made great albums, but never ever achieved the success that I think they were looking for and probably deserved. However, there are many more bands from this era and from San Francisco for us to look at, and those are future episodes. So I hope you enjoyed this. Keep it rocking. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out. Most of the albums that I talk about can be found at your local vinyl store or on eBay. Individual songs most likely are on Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music, or even some on YouTube.